I don't want this to sound bad, but the Marine Corps was kind of the easy button. You know, it's scary on the other side when you're transitioning. And many times throughout my career, I go, okay, this is it. After this enlistment, I'm going to move on. But something kept me going. And I would say it's like, okay, I'm continuing to get promoted. I'm continuing to be a good unit, surrounded by great people. Maybe I should stick around at least another enlistment. And I think that had a big play in it. That's what made me go from 20 to 30. Excited about, you know, with each promotion, the increased scope of responsibility, the bigger sphere of influence you have. I think I did a pretty good job of influencing others and teaching people to be better Marines, better people. So I feel that's what kept me going on top of it. And it may sound negative, but it being the easy button.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. My guest this time served 30 years in the Marine Corps. He got out in 2022 at the rank of Sergeant Major. He retired in 2022. I want to give him that credit. He started his career in the infantry, and he ended it assigned to helicopters. He even did a stint assigned to HMX-1, which is the President's Helicopter Squadron. Today, he's working for Booz Allen Hamilton. He's a contractor and back working with Marines in San Diego. There's a lot more to his story. I've only hit on the wave tops, obviously with 30 years of service. So let's get into it. Here's episode 136 with Sean Greenleaf. After 30 years, the Marine Corps, what did you enjoy the most? Because there aren't a lot of people who make the military 30 years. What did you enjoy the most?
I think what I enjoyed the most was the brotherhood. I imagine most people, whether they serve 4 years or 30 years, will walk away and say that they enjoyed the brotherhood, the sisterhood, the camaraderie amongst those that have shared thoughts and that wear the same uniform. Recently, I've been referring to it as my tribe, and I feel that being around like-minded people with the same goals are what kept me going. Yeah.
I like to do a path of you as a child and leading up to it. But before I step into that one, just the one thing, when you went in, were you thinking, I'm going to do a full career?
I could talk about that for a while. No way. I had no intentions on making a career of it. As a matter of fact, I used this to welcome young Marines into my unit because, they see a sergeant major that's on the edge of retirement. And they don't realize that once upon a time, I was a young Marine reporting to my very first unit as well. So I often share with them I wouldn't say they're necessarily goals, but my unwritten goals of my first enlistment. And I could just talk for a moment about that. My goals after talking to a recruiter, and I wouldn't say I had a bad experience with a recruiter. I'm sure a lot of people will say that.
So you're in the minority that had a good experime.
I wouldn't say it was good generic or bad. It was what was expected. My father was a Marine, so he kind of warmed me up for that. Some of the goals I had going to the Marine Corps were to save some money because it sounded realistic, something that I could do. The recruiter mentioned the opportunity to take college classes. I was a below average student, not because I was dumb, but because I wasn't focused on it. I was more thinking about having fun than hitting the books. So saving money. And I thought that it was realistic after discussing with recruiters and former military that I could walk away with an associate's degree after my first enlistment. My third goal was to be single at the end. And maybe that goal came on a little once I joined the military, because I saw so many young people going through challenges in marriages. So I was like, early on, I was like, I'm not getting married because I see the struggle that these young people have. And then my fourth goal was to get out, quite honestly. I could talk more about that. Did I save money during my first enlistment? Absolutely not. Because what I did was leave hometown America, and I grew up in Southwest Michigan, and report to Southern California, and I made the best friends that I still have to this day. And what do you do when you're young, your hair's on fire, and you're in Southern California? You have a lot of fun. So running around, I didn't save a penny. As a matter of fact, like so many people after their first enlistment, I was probably in a little over my head in debt. My second goal of getting a college education, I took 2 classes. So I fell well short of my associate's degree that I had hoped to achieve. After
pause you right there. Did taking the 2 classes only happen because a combination of you're not applying yourself to take more, or was it more about the time available to take more classes?
I would say it's a little bit of both. I realized later in my career when I did actually achieve a degree, you can make time, right? You know, everything we own is sitting on this table. If I'm going to add something else to this table, I got to take something off. So it's what you're willing to take off that table. I usually use a bucket, but my 2 classes that I took were at a point in my first enlistment where I was 1 in Okinawa and not a lot going on. So it was an opportunity to take classes in the evenings. And then my second class was shortly after returning from Okinawa the first time, before we had started to do workups for the next deployment. And there wasn't a lot going on. So those were just 2 easy targets to shoot on that I'm glad I didn't miss them, because maybe if I wouldn't have taken those 2 classes, it wouldn't have made me have the thought to pursue further education. So, but yeah, my first enlistment didn't knock out an associate's degree, but glad I took the opportunity to take those 2 classes when training and life, presented itself, the opportunity. And then, after my first deployment, went back home to, Kalamazoo, Michigan. Few people know where that is, but I ran into a girl that I went to high school with.
Bob Seeger from Kalamazoo?
He's not from Kalamazoo. He's from Michigan. Derek Jeter's from Kalamazoo. Played high school there. And me and nobody else.
just those 2 people. Yeah. Hey, you're in good company.
That's right. He's a little more successful than me. I met a girl that I went to high school with, and a few months down the line, it started to get serious. We got married and stayed in a marriage for about 10 years. So I screwed up that third goal of mine to stay single. No regrets. And, ultimately we split ways, but, it was a learning opportunity for me, just like anybody else. And then lastly, my fourth goal of getting out, I totally screwed that up. When I stuck around for 26 more years. But I shared that.
You weren't certain. You were still trying it out.
And quite honestly, I was in Okinawa probably 6 months out of the last 8 months of my first enlistment. And it really gave me an opportunity to think about, well, am I ready to go back to Michigan? And will I start to achieve some of the goals that I put off? Am I in debt more now than I'm comfortable starting a new, chapter in my life? And, after assessing all that, discussing it with my now ex-wife, I realized staying in was the right answer for me. And so, it's a lot different than today. I submitted a re-enlistment package maybe 3 months before my end of service, and it got turned around pretty quick. Today, it's much more competitive. Not as simple for young Marines to get retained that late, especially in their first enlistment. So I was fortunate that things lined up and I stuck around. And after my first enlistment, I re-enlistment and went to a non-deploying billet because I thought, okay, this is the opportunity for me to set all those goals into action. I'm not going on deployment. We're in a smaller town. We're not in Southern California. I moved to Parris Island to be a primary marksmanship instructor. Well, I didn't really achieve many of those goals again, but, didn't take the opportunity to go to college. Just, I would say that, the I had some success in life, but it was the mistakes that I learned the most from. And you're aware of that. And so are probably most of your viewers. So
you've already mentioned Southwest Michigan.
Yes,
so
sir.
Is that hometown? Is that where you grew up?
Yeah, that's where I grew up. I was born in Oceanside, California. My father retired about a year after I was born. And then we were transitioning. He was transitioning out of the military and was fortunate to come across a friend, and it's all about networking. It was then, it is now. I'll talk about how networking got me where I am today. And his friend had lined up an interview for him with what was then Upjohn Company. Now it's Pfizer, probably after several other iterations and different changes in names. And he, left the Marine Corps and was fortunate to start a new career as a computer programmer for Upjohn, and super grateful that he had that opportunity, because it really, kept our family grounded, where a lot of young people move around a lot. I didn't have that in my life.
So how many years were you in Oceanside before you went to Michigan?
Like I was still in diapers when we left. Yeah.
What about brothers, sisters?
Yeah, I have 2 sisters that are twins that are 2 years older than me, and a brother that's 4 years older than me. My brother is mentally handicapped. So I would say that I learned a lot of life lessons just by being around my brother. I have a great family. They're great people. My parents were amazing. I don't have a bad childhood experience that I could share with the viewers. I wasn't one of the many that came from, poor poverty or anything else and climbed the ladder to success. I would say that my parents gave me everything that I needed, not everything I wanted, to be successful, and really taught me what I needed to know to be, a constructive member of society.
You mentioned previously that your grades weren't the best simply because of not applying yourself.
Absolutely.
So as a young boy growing up, what took up your time? What did you like to do?
Social life, run around with the boys, skateboarding, skiing in the winter, going to sporting events, playing sports.
What sports did you play?
I grew up playing soccer primarily, and, enjoyed playing hockey. Winter time, going skiing. I was never a great skier, but I would definitely say I didn't apply myself. And, I don't know if it was just teachers being grateful or not, or giving, but I would say I barely graduated high school.
Were you, in general, though, a good kid, or a kid who was kind of pushing the envelope?
I think, looking back, that I was a good kid that made some mistakes, but I wouldn't say that my character overall was bad.
So nothing that ever potentially could have derailed your future?
Other than, some underage drinking that I imagine every kid has done in their life. Nothing criminal by any means. No, nothing like that. No.
From your mom and dad's perspective, especially with your dad being, a career Marine, the lack of application, did that cause for consternation between you guys?
See, you're using big words.
Sorry.
Consternation.
Struggle.
Yeah. They're aware of it, and I would say, were more disappointed than frustrated. They were never mad at me for it. They probably saw a lot more potential in me than I saw in myself, and they were probably a little discouraged that I just didn't apply myself. I would bring home grades that were disappointing. And I, looking back, I could have done things a lot different, and just wish I would have. And quite honestly, those poor grades and are in large part what led me to join the Marine Corps. I joined the Marine Corps the spring of my senior year. Once I turned 18, about 2 months after my 18th birthday, the recruiters, I think I was a gift to them. They didn't need to come looking for me. I went to them. I think the recruiters called my house for my sisters, and my dad got on the phone and said, my boy turns 18 in 2 years. You can call back then. Don't bother calling for now.
Did your sisters go in the military?
No. My dad probably scared everybody off from calling them.
For you growing up, was your dad pushing the military on you?
Subliminally, I guess. I look back at some of my young school pictures, and I have like a short sleeve khaki shirt that says U.S. Marines over the pocket. So I would say that was a way. He wore a Marine hat everywhere he went, the traditional red hat of a retiree. So he never said, Sean, like, this is the way for you to get out of Kalamazoo and go do something bigger. But I would say subliminally, there was always an advertisement in the house, an e-globe and anchor hanging on the wall. It wasn't, overboard, but it was enough to make me think that, hey, there's an option right there. And I didn't want to accept going to a small community college in Kalamazoo. I thought that, I'm not ready to go off to a 4-year college. None of them would have accepted me at that point. So the Marine Corps seemed like a good option for me. And I look back at that to get back to your question about encouragement from my father. He never really did encourage me. And I asked him years later, why did you never encourage me? Why didn't you push for me to join when I was 17, knowing the trajectory that my education was going? And he said, and I'm grateful for it, and I'm glad I asked the question. He said, well, I never wanted you to have bad feelings towards me because I pushed you into something. Because if you loved it, great, you take all the credit. But if you disliked it, then you might have, you may have some remorse in your decision. So I thought, man, that makes absolute sense and something I wouldn't have thought of.
You mentioned already the subliminal imaging that you grew up with. And in conjunction with that, did your dad talk fondly about his time in the Marine Corps? Or was it something that, don't follow my footsteps, I made a mistake kind of deal?
Oh, he definitely spoke fondly about it. He shared that his success in life started in the Marine Corps, and, talked about all of the many things that you learned, the additional skills, the things that you have to offer society, time management, prioritizing tasks. So he never one day spoke, that it was a mistake. He loved it. And, for him to leave the Marine Corps and transition right into another career that he gives all credit to his experience in the Marine Corps. So
when did you actually make the decision, though? Because you mentioned you enlisted right after you turned 18, but you're still in high school. But when did it actually solidify itself for you? Like, hey, I'm going in the military after high school.
Yeah, I think a lot of people join the Marine Corps, and some people that are questioning about that, like early in life, they're like, I knew it was all I wanted to do. I saw a Marine in dress blues, and that's what I wanted to do. Unfortunately, I don't have that kind of great story. I would say that it was just, it was almost like option B or option C. Not to say that it's a bad option. I would say that it wasn't something that I dreamt about as a young child doing. I always thought my dad was he's the ultimate tough guy. He was a Marine. My dad can beat up your dad kind of stuff. But I wouldn't say it was really until, probably the summer after my junior year, going into my senior year, that I was like, yeah, I'm joining the Marines because these other things, school isn't for me. I just want to experience something else. So what year did you go in? 1992. The end of 1992, I went off to boot camp.
And where'd you go to boot camp at?
I went to boot camp here at MCRD San Diego.
Did you get the option, or were you on that dividing line where you go west?
I thought back in those days that it would make sense to go to Parris Island. But maybe the state of Michigan was cut in half. I don't know. If they gave me an option, I don't recall it. Yeah.
Going in, what job did you have planned, or did they say you were going to do, and did you get what they said you were going to get? I did get what they said. They offered me an open contract, and I brought that back to my father. I said, what is this? And he said, well, that means they can shove you wherever they want you. And I said, well, I don't want to do that. And, we had that discussion, like, what'd you do? Because my dad started off as an infantry Marine and later moved into computer programming,
which is probably data something nowadays. And he said, if you want a great experience, you want, adventure, you need to join the infantry. So I went back and, I don't know if I bargained. I probably didn't have much bargaining collateral. But, I went back to the recruiter and said, I'm not interested in the open contract. I want to, join the infantry. So they gave me that, and I'm grateful they did, quite honestly. It was just 03XX. I didn't know which particular field in the infantry I was going to get. Back in those days, young Marines would go to Marine combat training and then to SOI if they were going to the infantry. Nowadays, I believe, they go right into SOI, and I might be wrong on that. So
SOI, School of Infantry?
School of Infantry, I'm sorry. Marine combat training is for those occupational fields that aren't infantry. So everybody else. And where you learn to be a basically trained Marine rifleman or infantryman. So if you're doing rear security on a deployment, you understand the concept of rear security or fire maneuver or whatever the case may be at Marine combat training. Part of the way through Marine combat training was where all the infantry Marines would break off and go to the School of Infantry. And it was at that point that they told us which particular field inside the infantry we were going to have. And they said they had us in some bleachers on Camp Pendleton in Southern California here. And they said, Greenleaf, 0331. And I go, okay. And I whispered to my buddy, what's 0331? And he goes, oh, it's a machine gunner. I'm like, that's awesome. I'm pretty excited about that. And for, those that don't know, like I quite honestly feel that being a machine gunner is a cult within a cult. I didn't come up with that phrase; somebody else did, but I think that's exactly true. They're just a different breed inside an infantry platoon, and looking back, I'm just super grateful that was the skill set that I was handed as a young Marine, and it just something I still wear to this day with a lot of pride.
And we've talked already about the multiple enlistments and the reevaluations of your life and your career as a Marine. And I would like to get into your transition, so to speak,
yes, sir,
towards helicopters. But initially, was that on your radar to get towards a helicopter squadron?
Oh, no, not at all.
And you mentioned being a firearms instructor. So the way I understand it, that's part of the career progression that you have to take an instructor billet?
There is no requirement as an enlisted Marine to have an instructor billet. I have had several throughout my career. I was primary marksmanship instructor. It's just, as a young Marine, it was an easy fit. And then later on down the road, my career basically went like this: deploying unit to a non-deploying unit to a deploying unit to a non-deploying unit, and so on.
By choice?
I thought that was the way you're supposed to do it, quite honestly. And maybe somebody shared a little mentorship with me as a young Marine, and I thought, okay, well, I'll mold my career to look like that. I see a lot of people that don't do that, but that's just kind of the way I was taught coming up. So I went from a deploying unit to be a marksmanship instructor to a different deploying unit. And then I went to what's the basic school. The basic school is basically a 6-month school for second lieutenants where they learn to become basically trained rifle platoon commanders. That's the best way I could describe it, not having ever been in that school. I was an instructor of small arms again and infantry style weapons at that school. Then I went off to another deploying unit, and then I got the opportunity to be a drill instructor later on. So I did have the check in the box multiple times on being an instructor, but and it's definitely something that could either add to your career or detract from your career. For instance, being a marksmanship instructor, I learned a skill set, but I wouldn't say it is career progression. I taught at the basic school, but I wouldn't say it necessarily did anything to progress my career as far as broaden my opportunity for promotions. Being a drill instructor definitely does. Special duty assignments, recruiting, drill instructor duty, Marine security guard. Those are the ones that kind of help increase your trajectory for future promotions.
You mentioned having a good mentor. Was that something that you sought out, or you, in looking back on it, just happened to, I don't want to call it right place, right time, but some people don't listen to that advice that's given to them and they don't really realize it at the moment. Did you realize it at the time? Like, hey, I need to listen to whoever this person was and take what they're telling me and implement it?
I think being at the right place in the right time is pretty much how it worked. But I sought out any senior Marine's opinion. You know, you can make a decision pretty quick upon meeting someone. I want to listen to that guy. I want to take something away from that guy. Like, what is he doing right? He sounds intelligent. He's in the right place. He's achieved something that I want to achieve. So I'm going to listen to this person. You can also see somebody and go, that is not the person I want to be. And I was surrounded by great Marines as a young man. I could go down a list and just name so many people that influenced me, but it was never one of those opportunities where somebody said, I'm going to be your mentor and you're going to be my mentee. The Marine Corps has kind of gotten into that construct now. And it's good if person is not getting any mentorship, but I was fortunate enough to just follow the lead of so many great people. And that's what helped me succeed.
That's a key point that you bring up, because you can be put in the situation to be mentored, but if you're not open to it and you don't take what the person's teaching you or giving you on its value, then it's basically pointless. So that's where I was kind of getting at, is like, did you realize it at the time that I need to be mentored and accepting it willingly?
I would say that as a young Marine, I don't know if I felt the need to be mentored.
I know everything.
Yeah, right. I mean, I would say maybe sometimes those mentors had to beat it into me, not physically, but, to get the point across, had to, reinvigorate it a few times. I'm sure I screwed up a lot as a young Marine, and maybe they saw something in me that they saw some promise for future potential. But looking back now, I think it was probably after my first enlistment where I, at that point I said, okay, well, this is likely going to become a career. You did 4 years, you continued on for another 4 years. Heck, you're halfway almost rounding up to retirement. Why not make this a career? So I think it was during my second enlistment that I said, you know what? I need to look for somebody that's been successful, that's got a few more ranks on me, and try to emulate what they do. And that's when I started to seek out mentorship, and fortunately was surrounded again by a lot of good Marines that were willing to offer it up.
And about your 10-year mark, your middle of your third enlistment, 9/11 happened.
Yes.
Prior to that, though, did you deploy during Desert Storm or the Gulf Wars?
No, I was
you were just after it, right?
Just after it, yeah.
So how did that impact you and your career when 9/11 happened? Did that reaffirm the importance for you to stay for a career?
Oh, it absolutely did. When I talk to young Marines about how 9/11 changed me, I often use, I say, hey, up until 9/11 happened, I felt like the Detroit Lions. And I'm a Steelers fan, so nothing against the Lions necessarily. I hope they're successful next year, and I think they may be, but but they practice every year. They go to games and they practice and practice and practice, but never get into the big game. So I joke around saying I felt like a Detroit Lion because I never got to go to the Super Bowl. And then when 9/11 happened, I mean, I remember exactly where I was sitting. I remember somebody coming into a room and saying the World Trade Center just got struck by a plane. And I knew right then and there, like, hey, something is going to change about, I'm no longer going to be a Detroit Lion. And it did. I mean, that day we, attitudes changed, where people may not have taken training as serious. It immediately became serious because there's an opportunity and a likelihood that you're going to go off and face combat. And I knew that once I got that opportunity, that it wasn't something that was going to end. Quite honestly, I wouldn't say that I thought it was going to last decades. And as a matter of fact, when 9/11 happened, I already had orders from a deploying unit to a non-deploying unit. Fortunately, while at that non-deploying unit, the basic school that I talked to earlier, I had the opportunity to deploy to Iraq, which is somewhat unheard of. And it gave me that first experience. And my first experience in combat was being a military advisor to the Iraqi army. And it was early 2004, so really the invasion had happened. Those folks that had been part of the invasion were coming back and sharing their stories. And I was really, at this point, being in a non-deploying unit going, man, did I miss this opportunity? And then when the opportunity came up to deploy from the basic school in a non-deploying billet, I jumped at the opportunity. And, training the Iraqi army was definitely challenging. We were understaffed. They were,
a little more difficult than training new recruits.
Absolutely. And fortunately, my time on the drill field came after my time of training the Iraqi army. So I was, I knew what I was getting into, people that didn't know how to march, people that didn't know how to brush their teeth, make a bed, you name it. But, to get back to your question, 9/11 was definitely something that in the middle of my early career just pivoted exactly where my mindset was, what my expectations were, where I thought I would be, what I thought I would be doing. And I would say that my first deployment with the Iraqi army really made me want more. I got back from that deployment with the Iraqi army. We're mostly in northern Iraq to the west of Mosul on a town called Tel Afar. And halfway through that deployment, we moved down to Taji, just outside of Baghdad. And when I returned home, my monitor asked me what I wanted to do next. I wanted to, because the drill field had, gave value to future promotions, I thought, okay, well, it's that time in my career, I better take this opportunity. So I became a drill instructor after that. Now I'm at the drill field. Some other folks are coming back from the invasion, some other parts of the war in Iraq. And I, once again, am I going to miss future opportunities? So on the drill field, I was surrounded by a lot of great people, had a lot of great mentorship out there. And, lo and behold, the war didn't end during those 3 short years. And once I left the drill field, I got more opportunities to deploy to Iraq and Afghanistan, and a lot of great opportunities there.
From the mental aspect of it, for your part, training up young Marines who are going to obviously be deployed to combat, and having that hindsight of, like you said, I felt like the Detroit Lions, where I spent a bunch of years of my career training, but never really getting to get to onto the playing field, knowing that they were more than likely going to be deploying. How did that impact you from a mental aspect?
I think it changed. I think a lot of people get the vision of what being a drill instructor is like, and being a recruit from like Full Metal Jacket or other movies. And
that's not a documentary.
Some people try to relive it, to tell you the truth, but I think that what I saw, having returned from Iraq and then going to the drill field, that there's a lot more to being a drill instructor than just marching on the parade deck and playing games with recruits. There's a lot of opportunities and downtime where you could be training them on important skills, at least introducing them to important skills that they're gonna experience in future combat. Instead of dumping out foot lockers just to play games with them, you could be teaching them, the different parts of a hand grenade and when it's appropriate to use a hand grenade versus a smoke grenade. Those two obviously don't mix, but but you get my point. There's there's hidden opportunities for drill instructors to make an impact. And, a lot of recruits think that drill instructors are all infantry Marines or special forces or something, where the truth be told, the majority are not. But I think, if for all those drill instructors out there that may be listening to this, like, you have a very important skill that basically trained Marines need to know about. If you're a dispersing Marine, they need to understand how the travel plans work for Marines deploying, or if you're a motor transport Marine, teach them the basics of a convoy. I would say that every drill instructor has the opportunity to teach something from their skill set to a recruit that can better prepare them for future combat, future time in the Marine Corps, futures in life.
For you, when you made the decision to cross the bridge and say, okay, I need to start thinking about this from a career perspective, I've crossed that middle mark, I'm definitely going a full career. Was it 20 years, or was it already in your mind, I'm going to do a full 30?
I think initially it was 20 years. My divorce had a part in that. When I got divorced, she shared with me immediately, I'm not coming after your retirement money, which is great. She said, but I do. The post 9/11 GI Bill had just become a thing. I transferred it to her. She says, but I do want to keep your GI Bill. I said, that's a fair handoff, mostly fair to me. No problem. Deal. Shake. All right. We moved on. But I still had that goal for my first enlistment to achieve a degree, and I still hadn't successfully accomplished it. So, not having the ability to use the post 9/11 GI Bill when I retired, I said, well, I got to stick around until I get that degree, because quite honestly, we're all more marketable with a degree than without a degree. And I'm grateful that I did. And that's really what encouraged me to go over 20. But I would say it wasn't just the degree. And I don't want this to sound bad, but the Marine Corps was kind of the easy button. It's scary on the other side when you're transitioning. And many times throughout my career, I go, okay, this is it. After this enlistment, I'm going to move on. But something kept me going. And I would say it's like, okay, I'm continuing to get promoted. I'm continuing to be a good unit, surrounded by great people. Maybe I should stick around at least another enlistment. And I think that had a big play in it. That's what made me go from 20 to 30. Excited about, with each promotion, the increased scope of responsibility, the bigger sphere of influence you have. I think I did a pretty good job of influencing others and teaching people to be better Marines, better people. So I feel that's what kept me going on top of it. And it may sound negative, but it being the easy button.
About how many years in did you finally get your degree?
27. Yeah. So just 23 years postponed from my original goal.
Any opportunities or any thought process for you of potentially going officer side?
Oh, no. Well, once upon a time, I did, put in a package to become a warrant officer. And I did not succeed. Back then they had a range officer job where, you basically teach marksmanship as a career. That job has gone away since then. And I applied for it, but didn't get accepted.
So switching to helicopters,
yeah.
How did that opportunity come about? And was it something you went looking for, or again, just right place, right time?
Yeah, it's really the right place, the right time. So in the Marine Corps, unlike the Army, it's okay, maybe I shouldn't say unlike the Army, but in the Marine Corps, I've never been a soldier. In the Marine Corps at E7, you make a decision whether to become a first sergeant or a master sergeant. I chose the first sergeant route, which is basically senior enlisted leader for a company. There's other senior enlisted leaders, and those are master sergeants, right? They're the subject matter experts in their MOS, and they're going to stay in that occupational field for the duration of their time in uniform. Where I could go to a diverse unit, a first sergeant can go to any type of unit that requires them. I was fortunate when I was selected for Firstar that I was an infantry battalion, and that I just completed one deployment as a gunnery sergeant to Iraq. And when I went to my sergeant major to talk to him, what should I do next? I said, I'd like to stay here. He said, well, let's talk to the monitor. And the monitor was great enough to leave me in place. I went from one company to another instead of changing units completely. And I was so excited about that. So now here I am, a first sergeant in an infantry company, getting a chance to deploy now for the first time to Afghanistan. And that deployment was by far the highlight of my career. It was truly my Super Bowl.
Because you were now in a leadership position, or because of what you were doing while you were there?
Because of what we were doing while we were there. I was fortunate to have like the best Marines that I could ask for in that experience. They were ready for the mission. The deployment before that was late Iraq, somewhat non-kinetic, somewhat complacent attitudes, where Afghanistan was really the beginning of the surge. And these guys knew that it was going to be a different deployment than the one previously. And they were ready for it. They trained hard. The leaders that we had, the squad leaders that we had, were the right people for the right place and the right deployment. They ran the deployment, and I was just fortunate enough to just make small adjustments, attitudes, and operations and leadership to where they were extremely successful. But to go back to transitioning into helicopters, so I got that opportunity as a first sergeant, and I remember as I was getting ready to leave that deployment, I can go to any unit as a first sergeant. I said, oh man, I just want to go to anything other than the infantry right now. I just need a break from you guys. You're too much for me. I need to go to anything else. Well, I got exactly what I asked for and went to a logistics unit. And as far as logistics unit are concerned, I went to a logistics regiment that had this strange company, a service company it was referred to as, and it was dispersing, postal, the PX, and legal was my company. So if you want to be as far away from the infantry as possible, go to a service company and you'll get exactly what you're looking for. It all makes sense now, why they're pooled together. But it was just as a first sergeant seeking promotion to sergeant major, they talk about having a diverse career. So, going from the infantry to a logistics unit made perfect sense. It's career progressing. I'm seeing a different part of the MAGTAF, the Marine Air Ground Task Force. And it was a great opportunity. I got to deploy once again to Afghanistan from that logistics regiment. And we are making the effort to retrograde equipment back from Afghanistan. And this is 2012. We are starting the retrograde process, closing down outlying bases and bringing the equipment in and getting it out of country. So, there's a lot of talk about us, having knee-jerk reactions and withdrawing from Afghanistan. Maybe tactically it was a knee-jerk reaction, but the plan had been there a decade prior to withdraw and start the withdrawal process. So I was fortunate to learn basically a reverse supply chain, because we're taking things out of operations and putting it back into the maintenance cycle or back into use, back into in the United States. Shortly after returning back from that year-long deployment in Afghanistan, I was selected for sergeant major. And once again, seeking diversity, I asked the monitor to send me to an aviation unit, not knowing really what I was getting into at all, because being an infantry Marine, I had one touch point, maybe two, of aviation guys. And that was my forward air controller that was attached to my company, of what aviation was. And Stoner, his call sign, if he's out there listening, like, yes, she drove me crazy. He wore sunglasses on his head and all the things that first sergeants don't like. But such a great guy. And he became a mentor of mine once I was selected to go to an aviation unit. So I was assigned to the Marine Wing Helicopter Squadron, it was Marine Headquarters Squadron down at 3rd Mall. And at the last minute, my orders were changed to VMM 165. So VMM, Marine Medium Tilt Rotor Squadron 165, which is Ospreys. And so it wasn't necessarily that I chose to go, well, I chose to get orders into an aviation unit, but it wasn't one particular platform. I never thought that aviation would become kind of the majority of my time as a sergeant major. I got the opportunity to deploy with VMM 165 to Kuwait, and we were doing, trap missions, tactical recovery of air personnel into Iraq. We were doing, we were inserting troops into Iraq when TQ and Al-Assad were being built back up. We never did a tactical recovery of air personnel, and that's a good thing, right? We were trained for the mission, but gratefully we never had to do it. Growing up in the infantry, you really think that, the marine aviation component of the MAGTAP is skate. You probably heard the term swinging with the wing. They don't swing at all. They are some of the hardest working people I've ever come across. It takes a lot of mechanic hours to make that big metal contraption fly around in the air. Shortly after I got there, I learned that I could become an aircrew member, referred to as AAL Gunner or aerial observer. And I go, well, you mean I can get like aircrew wings? How cool is that? Yeah, I want to do it. They said, okay, well, it's not, as simple as you may think it is. You have to go through a medical screening, get it cleared hot for a flight physical. At that point in my career, I was pretty beat up. So it took about a year to get through the physical process. And because I had to get several waivers that are approved way up high. And once I finally got cleared hot with the physical, then I had to go through some swim training. I am like negatively buoyant, so I'm not a natural swimmer by any means. But I had young Marines from my squadron that were going through the exact same training, the exact same time. So the only way I wasn't going to succeed is if I was at the bottom of the pool. And a tough couple days in the pool, but thankfully I succeeded. And, my time serving as a member of the air crew started right before deploying to Kuwait, and then the majority of my flying took place in Kuwait and in and out of Iraq. I had a great CO, I had a great XO. I mean, where I said that time as a first sergeant in Afghanistan was a highlight of my career, I would say that this opportunity to serve in aviation was second place. Well, okay, it was up there. And it was just learning something different. I was fortunate, and I would encourage others that are looking for a career path as a senior enlisted Marine to, it taught me what it meant to serve the Marine Air Ground Task Force. I understood the infantry very well. I had some experience in logistics, being deployed to Afghanistan for a year, and like I mentioned, the reverse supply chain and understanding the maintenance cycles of different equipment. And now here I am in aviation. So I truly had the Marine Air Ground Task Force covered. I could give advice to my commander based off an infantry perspective. I could talk about the maintenance cycles of different equipment outside of aviation, pretty well. So I thought that I was giving pretty good advice and being a good advisor to my commander. After we were about 3/4 of the way through that deployment, and I reached out to as a young sergeant major, I reached out to my sergeant major above me back at Miramar, and he said, well, what do you want to do next? I go, well, I'd like to go back to the drill field, or I'd like to stay local in the area. I want to stay in San Diego, right? I'd like to hang up the deploying hat for a little while and just get the opportunity to be in San Diego. And, a couple of days went by. He said, what do you think about going to the C-130 squadron here at Miramar? I go, that sounds great. Because they don't deploy as a squadron. They deploy in small detachments. So now I got tilt rotor experience. Now I'm gaining fixed wing experience. So now I even understand the different aspects of aviation. That unit was absolutely great as well. Had a great CO, great team of young Marines that were maintaining aircrafts, and got opportunities to fly with those guys as well. Not as a member of the air crew, but they're doing great trips and great training opportunities as well. So it's just learning a different aspect of aviation.
When you mentioned going to the Osprey unit, was that at the time when they were still having their problems, or had they gotten all that under control?
Well, they were becoming operational. So the unit I joined had just returned from a deployment in Afghanistan, but that was that unit's first deployment as an Osprey Squadron. So I would say they were operational. Every aircraft obviously has a point to where it has problems, but I would say that it was past that point of concern. I was never nervous about flying around in it. As a matter of fact, I think the Osprey is one of the greatest things that the MAGs has going for it today. It's, if you think back to the aircraft that are replaced, the CH-46, it could never accomplish the things that an Osprey could accomplish, just going greater distances, greater speeds, and still dropping off troops into the objective. It's just a more versatile aircraft. Temperamental, but pretty good aircraft.
I just remember the limited knowledge I have is when it first came online, there were quite a few hiccups with it, I'll call it. And I was just wondering where you were at in that process. So clearly a lot of that stuff was in the rearview mirror and they were moving forward at full speed.
Yes, sir.
Did I read correctly that you were assigned to the presidential helicopter unit for a period?
Yes. So, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, what was that like?
It was so cool. It was the last 2.5 years that I was served in uniform. Once again, at this point, I was in Hawaii in a headquarters command, and time to think about moving on to the next assignment. A great mentor of mine, and I had been talking about what was next, and he said, "Well, have you thought about coming to Headquarters Marine Corps and working in this capacity?" I said, "I do not want to do that. I don't want to finish my career in that type of unit." He goes, "Well, have you thought about HMX-1, which is Marine Helicopter Squadron 1, the President's Helicopter Squadron?" I said, "Really? That's pretty cool." And again, my goal is to get back to California. So I said, "Hey, I need to talk this over with my wife." I went to the house. I just immediately went to the house and said, "Hey, Kevin's talking to me about maybe going to HMX-1. Well, what's that?" I said, "That's the President's Helicopter Squadron." She goes, "Seriously?" I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "Well, and I told her about the other offer of going to, Headquarters Marine Corps. And she goes, "Well, I'm not really excited about moving to Quantico, Vice California, but if you can go to HMX-1, then I'm on board." And, it's a family decision in my eyes. So I went back to my friend and mentor and said, "Yeah, I'd love that opportunity." And I was fortunate that I'd already achieved a top secret clearance. One of the requirements to move over to HMX-1 is Sergeant Major. And I got orders there and was super excited about it. And then COVID-19 hit. And it was almost all stop at that point. The Marine Corps put in a stop move, stop loss for a short period of time. And I released my household goods to be shipped back to mainland from Hawaii. And they said, "Hey, your orders are on hold." And I go, "I don't have any furniture. I have nothing. I have an inflatable mattress." And they go, "Not my problem. Deal with it." And then fortunately, the Marine Corps said, "Okay, this is one of those must-have moves." And I was able to execute it. So flew from Hawaii back to California to visit family with 5 people on the plane, and got over to Quantico during, the height of COVID. it's just such a diverse unit. It's an amazing opportunity, and it's such an organization in itself. The mission is amazing. It's a privilege to have served there, and one that I appreciated every single day. I got to be there during both the end of the President Trump's administration, the beginning of President Biden's administration. I was there through a election cycle, and if you want to talk about, like, you could consider Marine Helicopter Squadron 1's tempo during an election cycle to that of the busiest combat deployment. Just the Marines are always moving, and they do such an amazing job. And I quite honestly never thought that a machine gunner would someday be having access to the White House. It was a great opportunity. So,
looking back on it, did COVID slow that up tempo at all compared to non-COVID years for the presidential helicopter unit?
I think it did. A lot of the benefits that go along with being in the helicopter squadron is the opportunity to go to White House events. Those were put on hold. Some of the social events, Marine Corps balls weren't happening. But the election cycle was still just as busy as, I think, non-COVID years. But for me, it did have an impact. Previous sergeant majors had the opportunity to travel a lot with the squadron, and I had the opportunity as well. But I understood where my place was back home with the Marines, because you're less effective when you're gone. But you go on a short-term deployment with Marine Helicopter Squadron 1, and things are all shut down. Going out to dinner is difficult. So I would say that's how it affected it. The Marines had to wear masks. It was kind of, whenever our Marines were going to support a presidential mission, they had to, take COVID tests prior to. They had to be, secluded to their home, their residence, prior to going out and supporting the mission. So it made things challenging, because where that Marine is going out on this mission, he still has responsibilities back in the squadron, maintenance and leadership, you name it. So it definitely affected the operational tempo, but like any Marine unit, they figured it out. They figured out a way to get around it.
Is the presidential helicopter unit a component of a bigger battalion, like Marine Security Guard? Is that a component of all of that, or are they completely separate?
They're somewhat separate. They fall operationally under the Deputy Commandant for Aviation. Well, maybe not. So he is truly the CO's boss. But they really fall operationally under the White House Communication Agent. I'm sorry, the White House Military Organization. Or White House Military Office. I'm sorry, which owns the Marines at Camp David. It owns a White House Communication Agency. They own the Presidential Air Group, often referred to as Air Force One. So we fell operationally amongst those units. But my boss reported to Deputy Commandant for Aviation, as well as the general or appointed person at the White House Military Office.
So you said that was the tail end of your career.
Yes, sir.
So where I'd like to transition now is you starting to process getting out. What was your planning like for your transition? You mentioned you've already gotten your college degree.
Yes.
So were you making plans for your retirement?
I was making plans for my retirement, not truly knowing what I wanted to do next. I have a lot of things here written down, like kind of advice. But one thing that I realized early on is one of my peers, a Master Gunnery Sergeant, who I really enjoyed having discussions with. I would say that he mentored me as well. was going through the experience at the same time. We found another lieutenant colonel inside the squadron who was going through the same timeline, and a chief warrant officer. So all four of us had different career paths. You know, I was an infantry guy, turned sergeant major, and now I'm at this great unit. The master gunner sergeant had been a mechanic on aircrafts his whole career, and now is leading a maintenance department. The lieutenant colonel is a pilot. The chief warrant officer was an enlisted Marine that became a chief warrant officer. So we have four different perspectives on the Marine Corps, and really we're going to four different parts of the world, and we all have different things to offer, but we're going through the same experience at the same time. So it was great because what we did is became each other's sounding boards. Hey, Paul, I did this. Have you started thinking about that? Oh, I haven't thought about that, but I did do X, Y, and Z. Have you thought about that? I said, well, I need to work on that. And we really bounced ideas off of each other to get us ready for it. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I'll tell you, I took a survey online. What am I best prepared to do? I asked some people around me. I was nervous. What do you think that I would be best set to do? Because this survey says I'm suitable for program manager. So, okay, I read up on program management. My sister-in-law is a program manager for a very successful company. I asked her about it. You know, do I go pursue my program management professional certification? Is it that important? Is it not that important?
What was your degree in?
My degree is in business administration. I went to the education office on base. I said, hey, here's my career. They turn it into, there's an acronym I don't recall. It used to be called a SMART transcript. They take your experience in the military and turn it into college credits. And, you know, there's accredited universities around the world that'll accept those credits and put them towards a degree. Growing up as a machine gunner and infantry Marine, you don't have a lot walking away from there, right?
Doesn't translate to brain surgeon?
No, not at all. So I took what I had and I said, hey, sir, what is the fastest route for me to get a degree? Like, you know, general education. He said, business administration, and this is a great college to go to and get that. I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And I just applied myself. I was taking, you know, their compressed classes that last 8 weeks long online. So truly 2 8-week periods become one semester in real school. So I was taking 4 classes a true semester, 2 at a time, sometimes 3, because now there's, you know, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I got to get this goal achieved, you know, several years after my initial goal was made, before I get out. So I was taking, you know, sometimes 3 classes at a time. I was using up all my tuition assistance, and business administration was it. And, you know, I thought that would translate to potentially program management. I went through like a boot camp for program management where I learned from Program Management Institute all the things I needed to know, a 35-hour period of instruction on the requirements for getting the certification. But it was like, you know, drinking through a fire hose, and it was hard to retain. And I never pursued the certification. I studied a little bit for the test, but they automatically tell you, right, when you're going through this training, hey, outside of this 35-hour class, you're probably going to need 80 to 100 hours of additional study time. I said, well, you know, you equate that to how much time you have until you are looking to start your next job. I don't have that much time. So maybe it's not something that I'm interested in pursuing. Fortunately for me, I got the opportunity to do a skill bridge. And for people that aren't familiar with that, it's an opportunity to serve on an internship while still serving on active duty. It has to be conducted during your last 180 days. And it was something that my CO was kind enough to allow me to leave the uniform behind and pursue. He had a sergeant major in place to replace me. So I got the opportunity to do a skill bridge with a company locally. And the first day I was there, I asked, hey, what are your deliverables? And, you know, where's your statement of work? Where are these things that are associated with program management? He goes, we don't have that. We don't do that here. He goes, I have to deliver a product on time, within specification, within budget, and that's how I'm measured. I go, okay, well, as a Marine leaving and just getting this 35 hours of drinking through a fire hose, I go, well, I mean, this is how you do it. This is how it lines up. And as a Marine, I was always used to pulling a book off the shelf and going, well, here's the reference that I can look back on how to do something. Well, that company didn't do any of those things. And they're super successful. They're a great company. And they make things happen and deliver a great product. But I just didn't find a home there. So I said, okay, thanks for the opportunity. I learned a little bit about corporate America. It was my first opportunity outside of uniform to pursue something like that. And it taught me a lot of valuable lessons. But now it's time. Now I'm back at the drawing board going, okay, what am I going to do next? And it was at that point, right before my actual retirement date, that I started coming down with like some anxiety and almost some depression, because for the first time, I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't have a set of orders that said, you're going here to report to this person and you're going to do this job. There was no career map that says you need to do X, Y, and Z to get to this next level. So, for the first time, I really had to think it out.
Where were you stationed at that time?
Well, my internship was here in Southern California. So I left Quantico. My wife and I moved back here. We got set up back in the house. I had a month or so before I started my internship. So I'm back in Southern California. When I started to get nervous, anxious, I increased my network. I started to go to networking opportunities. There's a lot of them out there. One particular one that I met a couple of good people at was I just went blank. I apologize.
That's okay.
Veteran Beers Association, where,
Veterans Beer Club, where folks get together and then they talk about the challenges of transitioning. And each person is just there, quite honestly, to either find a job or find somebody that's looking for a job. And met some good people through that. I attended a transition one-day seminar at a local tech company. And this is just a company that is giving back to veterans. And there's active duty people there, retired people there, young Marines that were there getting ready to leave the Marine Corps. So it wasn't just a group of old guys. And it was a great opportunity. I met some great people there. And it just so happened that company had a lot of senior leaders that were veterans. So they were, talking in common terminology. They were sharing their experiences, how, leaving the Marine Corps or leaving the military and getting a job doesn't necessarily mean that's the job you're going to have forever. Some of those folks had climbed the corporate ladder to get to a leadership position at that company. But it was that particular time I met a great mentor who has looped me into his network. And he said something really great, like, my network is your network and you got to make the network work. And, periodically you check in on me and I go, wow, like, this is like a person who has nothing to gain, but just everything to give by sharing his experience with me. And I said, quite honestly, I would love to do something like that as a profession to give back to Marine Corps. It didn't come to fruition, but I have taken the opportunity. Give it time.
Yeah, maybe. I've taken that opportunity to go to those same venues and give back and bring people that are transitioning out. Hey, there's this networking opportunity. I know you got a year left, but let's just go make some new friends, have a beer, some chow. I guarantee you're going to walk away with a little more in your toolkit than you had before you showed up. You're going to have a different perspective. And if nothing else, you're having a beer with me, we're going to catch up. So, after that internship, like I said, I was nervous, anxious, scared. And
as you're going through this I'll call it phases of, all right, I know I'm going to transition out. I need to find a job. And then all of a sudden it gets more real because you're getting closer, but no clear defining job is coming to you. You're not getting that vision. How much was the focus on where you wanted to work or what you wanted to do? Which was the bigger driving force?
That's a great question. What I wanted to do was the driving force. Initially, I wanted to do program management. I made the silly mistake of just trying to flood, LinkedIn and everywhere else with my resume and applications. And when program management wasn't working out, I said, okay, maybe I'm not meant for program management. Nobody is biting at my hook. Maybe I transition. And a lot of this, sergeants major feel that they are set up to be in human resources. So I kind of switched gears and said, okay, well, I'm going to now pursue a job in human resources. And I think some sergeant majors would be great at human resources, but they got to remember that they're not going to likely walk into a job as a human resource manager, and that's kind of what I expected. Like, okay, I'm going to walk in as a senior HR guy and just look over people, because that's the experience I had. I had experience looking over personnel, ensuring people were going down the right career path. Administratively, they were taken care of. Was I doing the administrative action? No, but I was somewhat managing it. When I went to pursue that opportunity, they go, so what's your experience with, benefits? I'm like, well, I understand the benefits that I had in uniform, and I understood how I could share them with others. I could translate, they learned the benefits associated with your company and share that with the employees. What about automated, application processes? I don't know what that is. What about X, Y, and Z? I have no experience in that. So truly, I'm looking to become a manager of a job that I have no experience serving lower down as a worker. So once again, I was like, okay, great. This isn't looking good. And then just happenstance happened. I was at a tailor shop. Well, I was going to the Marine Corps Ball. This is November of 22. My EAS is the end of November. So I was asked to be a guest speaker at a Marine Corps Ball in Hawaii. And I'm glad to say that the uniform I wore in boot camp was the same one I wore at my last Marine Corps Ball. But it's 30 years old. So I, just make sure I've been out of uniform for a little while, put it on, do a little check to make sure everything is working right. And the collar has like this ridiculous metal buckle, and it just gave up. Like the threads around it gave up and it broke. And I go, oh my God, like we're getting on a plane in 2 days. My uniform is no good. I'm gonna be standing up in front of a couple hundred people talking about my experience. I got to go somewhere to get this fixed. And I live in like San Diego, down, around La Jolla area. There's no tailor that are familiar with Marine Corps uniforms there. So I go to Oceanside, where they know exactly how to deal with this. And then they can do it relatively quickly while you wait. So I'm sitting there waiting. It's Marine Corps ball time, just an influx of
nobody else in there getting
nobody
uniforms
in the last minute,
fixed.
Right? Nobody else in the last minute hoping that Dorothy's in Oceanside can work a miracle. While I'm sitting there waiting, I see a guy walk in, and he's obviously out of the Marine Corps now. He's got somewhat of a, he didn't get a haircut the last Sunday, and he's got a little facial hair. So I'm often bad with placing names, but I can remember a face forever. So I said, hey, I'm not sure where, but I'm pretty sure we served together. He goes, hey, Sergeant Major, how you doing? I go, I'm great. And then it clicked where we had met. 5 days. We spent 5 days together in Afghanistan. When I was leaving Afghanistan as a first sergeant, he was the company commander, a captain coming in to take our place in our battle space. And I said, what are you up to now? He goes, well, I'm working with the Marine Corps again, and I work for this company. And I go, oh, really? That company? So I work for Booz Allen Hamilton. He goes, I work for Booz Allen. It's a great company. I have a great job. And instantly I was like, well, tell me a little bit more about Booz Allen. He said, well, I'm doing this job and I love it. He goes, what are you doing? I go, great question. I'm scared to death right now. I'm about to go to a ball, but I've been like devoting 6 hours a day to finding a job and have been completely unsuccessful and I'm scared to death. And he goes, okay, well, why don't we sit down and have coffee? Which is what grown-ups do, I guess. And I said, okay, great. So we go and we have coffee and he talks to me about what he's doing. He talks about my experiences in the Marine Corps, my education level, what I want to do next. And he says, you know what? I want to introduce you through email to my boss. And maybe there's a fit for you working once again with the Marine Corps. I go, I'm totally interested in that. That sounds amazing. And, for us only interacting with him with 5 days in Afghanistan, you don't owe me anything. And I'm so grateful for this opportunity. Thank you. And, he shared a link with me through the Booz Allen website. He said, put in this, application, give me your resume. I'm going to run it across my boss. And, within days, I had an interview lined up. It was, a virtual interview over Teams, and 3 retired Marines that I'm talking to. So we all talk the same talk, and we have somewhat of the shared experiences. And I reached out to my friend the next day. Hey, did you hear anything? How did they say the interview went? Well, they said the interview went well, but it's between you and some other people. Unfortunately, I didn't get that opportunity, but the manager that interviewed me, the hiring manager goes, Sean, we went with somebody else, but I'm interested in getting you on the staff of Booz Allen. He goes, are you interested in doing something else with the company? I said, yeah, absolutely. Right now, I was starting to undersell myself. I was like, I could be a janitor somewhere. Nothing against janitors, but I was like, it's honest pay for an honest work. But I was really trying to just find anything. I think I applied at Costco. And the next day I had another interview with Booz Allen. And the hiring manager said, we'd like to give you this opportunity. And Booz Allen Hamilton has this great program called the START program, Strategic Talent Acquisition. I don't recall what the other RT stands for, but it basically pulls me out of the field and onto the bench. So now I'm a Booz Allen employee, and they're just waiting for an opportunity to place me on a team. And I was like, man, this is amazing. They had great benefits, great pay, and I still didn't even know what I was going to be doing. I knew that it was going to be in program management, though. So I bounced back a few times between HR and program management. I knew it was going to be somewhere in the program management field. After about 2 weeks, I got a third interview at Booz Allen, and it's for my particular job. And it was to go work at NAVWAR, working in an acquisition position. And my TS clearance is in large part why I got the opportunity to do this. It's a classified program for the Navy. And, I got in there. I worked with a great team. Once again, it was all former military or somewhat associated with the military, everybody on my team. So I made friends immediately. I grasped onto the people that had obvious experience and followed in their footsteps the best I could. I was hungry for information, so I was pulling that from the people that I could. And it all worked out great. After a little while, I go, okay, I wanted to work for Booz Allen to be with the Marine Corps. I'm going to look through their website and see if there's any opportunities outside of NAVWAR and working on this Navy contract to work with the Marine Corps again. And thankfully there was an opportunity to work with the Marines as a consultant up there and work on exercises. So I reached out to that same hiring manager that I did my first interview with, And he's, I sent him an email, and he said, "Do you have time to talk later today?" I'm like, "Absolutely. I'll do whatever you want." And, we spoke on the phone, and he said, "Well, take the weekend, adjust your resume for this position, and then we'll talk on Monday." Monday came, and, I think I got my resume to him before the weekend, but had a now a fourth interview with Booz Allen, and again over Teams, and I got hired on to come work with the Marine Corps, and that's where I am now, and I couldn't be happier. Just every day going back on a Marine Corps base and being with my tribe once again. It's nothing but great.
Is where you got brought on board with Booz Allen a specific arm of Booz Allen that is catered to or lined up for veterans, or is it just across the board Booz Allen likes bringing on veterans?
Well, it is not veteran specific. A lot of young people just finishing their degrees. San Diego State had a pretty big population there. But I would say that Booz Allen definitely likes veterans. A lot of their projects are geared towards the military. So, I would say they're definitely a good company to work for, because the transition from military into a military supporting community is a good one.
Did you already have this new job lined up when you actually EAS'd, or was there a period where you were retired and just waiting for work?
Yeah, there was 45 days when I was terrified. So my EAS, I started retirement December 1st, and I got that job opportunity on January 14th. It just so happened to be my birthday, so I remember it very well. And, when you're going through transition courses, they talk about how, you're going to retire and then you're going to get your retirement pay. Well, my retirement pay was even backed up a couple days because it was the holiday time. And I had a friend who I had 30 years of, we went to recruit training at the same time. And so I called him, "Hey, Todd, did you get paid?" "Oh, not yet." "What's going on, man?" I go, "It's the holidays. I don't know. Maybe that has something to do with it." It's the first time. And, a couple of days later, we started getting paid. "Okay, great. We're good." I said, "Hey, have you heard back from the VA?" He goes, "No, I haven't heard back yet." And I said, "Well, neither have I." So a couple of days later, he goes, "Hey, I heard back from the VA." I go, "Okay." I go, "I still haven't heard." You think that, you kind of learn through the transition courses that you submit your paperwork early enough, you'll find out sooner. He found out about 10 days after our retirement, and it took me about 3 months. So again, I was nervous about that, but I would say there was 45 days when I was like truly unemployed and nervous. And I would say that's when I was underselling myself, because I had a number. I think every person leaving the military has a number. People most likely have a position, a number, a location, and a few other factors. I wasn't particular about what company I was working for, somewhat particular about what field I wanted to go into, but really I had a number because I wanted to live in Southern California, and it's not cheap. So I started underselling myself and going, okay, well, maybe instead of that number, I could take 10% less and do this job, or maybe I could do something even below that. And it took a simple meme that I saw on social media that said, "Remember who the F you are." And I go, oh my God, that's talking to me right now. Like, stop being scared, stop being nervous, stop underselling yourself, and just remember who you are. Like, you've gotten through so many things, whether you're a law enforcement officer, a first responder, a Marine, a member of the military, 4 years, 40 years, you've gotten over so many obstacles. Like, just remember who you are, and you're going to be okay. We've all been in challenging situations, sometimes when the cards are stacked against us, and we've managed to overcome those things. So that meme really talked to me that day. And, just the opportunity to go, okay, I'm going to be all right. And my wife was like my biggest supporter, because she could have very easily gotten nervous along with me. And that would have been terrible for our household. So that's something I share with a lot of people when I talk to them when they're transitioning. Make sure you and your spouse, your family are on the same sheet of music, because if you're going to be nervous, they can't be. And if they're going to be nervous, you can't be, you know, so you got to have a little bit of give and take. And thankfully she was like, Sean, it's okay. Like, it wasn't meant to be. There's another opportunity. Remember, you heard back from this company not too long ago. Have you followed up with them? And she was my biggest supporter. So I'm so grateful. And some of the mentors that I had, would check on me periodically and, you know, hey, bring your resume and let's take a look at it one more time. You know, the resume isn't the end all be all, but it's something to get you the interview. And I feel that the network is even more important than that resume, because and by name referral obviously carries a lot more weight than a piece of paper, you know, and with automated application systems that I knew nothing about in the HR department. You know, they have computers that pulls out all the smart information that they need to know and to give them the best applicant that they're looking for. So is my resume doing that? I don't know.
Did you work with a professional resume writer?
You know, not at first. Well, I'm sorry. I'll go back. Yes. So at Transition Readiness Seminar, they go over writing resumes for a day. When I went through the Transition Readiness Seminar, I was still about a year out from retirement. So I didn't put a lot of effort into that resume because things were going to change. My location was definitely going to change. So I didn't put a lot of effort into it. I did reach out to a company named Canderful that has professionals in the corporate world that, you know, not only look at your resume, but they do mock interviews with you. I reached out to another company, and the name of it's escaping me, but they have people free of charge for veterans that will help you write your resume. Hire Heroes USA. You know, I have another retired service member asked me for my fitness reports, and I sent them out to him, and he took all that and in just a matter of days sent me a starting point. And that was my first real resume. I did make some silly mistakes instead of really proofing it, and I was just eager. I just started putting them out there. And then I finally sat down and dissected it. And then I turned back to my mentors who had helped me in other places and go, hey, what do you think about this? And one just red penned it just to death and just, you're doing this all wrong here. You know, like you're saying this, you're maybe outside of what you truly did, and made some adjustments. I reached out to one friend who had been going through retirement around the same time, and he used a company that he paid money for. And I was close to doing that before I got the opportunities that I did. So my resume went from being pretty bad to what I would consider average to maybe slightly above average. By no means am I the guy to turn to for a resume writing class, but I am maybe able to pick out some things to help somebody be a little more successful in resume writing.
There was definitely a period, obviously, like you said, for 45 days where you were nervous about your next job. But as far as the actual transition out of the military after 30 years and basically growing up in the military, any regrets leaving?
No. One, at 30 years, I had to leave. But it's crazy how much the military will beat your body up. My performance and physical fitness had declined, not to the point to where I was failing anything. I was still, you know, getting first class physical fitness tests and whatnot, but I wasn't at the condition that I was in. So my body had really taken a toll. And I was tired, I guess, you know. I think that 30 years is the magical number for an enlisted guy to go. I mean, some get the opportunity to go beyond that are in unique situations, but I thought that 30 years was the right number for me, because it was time. And I would say that, you know, I was 48 at the day that I retired, and, you know, people transitioning got to look at that when, you know, we talked about 20 years vice 30 years. How much more marketable are you at 38 than you are at 48? And at 48, I would say you're kind of reaching the end of that marketability. So 30 years was the right time. Regrets, I have no regrets from my career.
You brought up a good point about the marketability. Looking back with a little bit of hindsight now, would you recommend somebody getting out at 20 or staying till 30 in the sense of what they're going to do afterwards, as opposed to more of the opportunities of what they have by staying in?
Yes. I think that everybody's situation is going to be different. I think the opportunities that you have at retiring at 30 are great. You know, if you're collecting, retirement 30 years as an E9, you make a pretty good retirement. If you're collecting any kind of disability, that's on top of it. If you're going to retire and you want to truly retire in small town USA, you're going to be successful in that. But going 20 years, vice 30, I would say that my recommendation to people are, what does success after the military look like to you? Because everybody's definition of success is extremely different. My ultimate goal is to work till I'm 55. I'm 50 right now, and be retired. Well, things have to change between now and then. Move to a more affordable place, save up some money. But I think that my retirement and my disability money can carry me in a very comfortable living somewhere else. That's not San Diego. In Michigan, I would say that I live comfortably. So I think that folks making a career in the Marine Corps need to make that decision, or at least have that discussion with their family. Like, should I retire at 20 years? I'm much more marketable. I've achieved all my goals maybe over these past 2 decades. What do we want? What does success look like for our family after the military? Does it mean that I'm going to work for another company? Does it mean that I'm going to grind for 30 or 20 more years at, another organization? Am I going to have another career? I don't plan to have another career. I plan to have a job that'll carry me a little bit. And what does our family situation look like? Because that has a big part in it as well. If you can leave at 20 years and start a new career, if you've got the network, if you've got the opportunities, then do it, because you are very marketable. But I would say it definitely takes a lot of planning. And I would say that oftentimes I stayed in because I didn't plan. I wasn't ready at 20 years just because I didn't make it a priority. But when you know you're at the end of the line, you have no choice but to make it a priority to prepare for that. I started preparing about 2 years prior to my end of active service. And I would suggest that probably folks should look at doing it even earlier, just to build that network, look at opportunities, really make a decision. Some people leave the Marine Corps and walk into a light field. If they're in, I don't know, if they're a mechanic, they walk out of turning wrenches on a tactical vehicle and turn wrenches, or manage a maintenance department at, Oshkosh or something. Or if it's from, being a pilot, they go from being a pilot and they go on to work at United. It's hard to go from being a machine gunner, or even sergeant major doesn't relate to a lot of jobs. I think there's people out there that can find a job that's similar to being a sergeant major, but I wasn't one of those. I don't know what that job is, but I think they're out there. So
you bring a great perspective in that this is where it falls on each of us when we're going to give a career to whatever organization. There is that balancing act with the assignments and opportunities that are fun, that are enjoyable, that we like doing, a machine gunner. But then you have to be saying to yourself always, what is the marketability of what I'm doing today, tomorrow? And so does it benefit me to keep pushing forward in this career, doing what I'm doing now for the purpose of what I'm going to be able to do when I retire?
That's a great point. It's some Marines that see that early are really thinking outside the box. So many opportunities in the more technical military today than yesterday, and they're seeing those opportunities. Marines that are like, hey, there's this cyber job that's out there now that wasn't there a couple years ago. I'm going to move into that because I see something out there in the future that's going to pay good money, that's going to make my family successful. So they're leaving the fun behind. They're leaving, the deployments behind. They're leaving some of the things that they grew up loving in the Marine Corps to look out for the future. And those are the people that are thinking outside the box. And I would say that maybe once or twice I thought about that opportunity, but it never came to fruition. I mentioned that I did apply to become a warrant officer. I don't know how that would have changed my life. But I would say that those people that are, okay, I got this, I got my foot in the door, I got some education now. Now I'm going to look at a career in the Marine Corps that's hungry for me, counterintelligence, cyber, the list goes on and on. And I'm going to transition to that early, and have more opportunities after the Marine Corps.
We started this by you talking about the notes that you brought and wanting to make sure you got the opportunity to reference everything. So in wrapping it up, any last pieces of advice or anything from your notes that you want to make sure you hit?
I have a particular hard time when I see notes that I just get boggled down in them. So I apologize for
That's okay.
for turning my attention away for a moment. Here I'll try to wrap this up rather quickly. I think some of the things I did right, some of the things I did correct. My wife and I decided what success looks like, and I think that's an important thing for people that are leaving the Marine Corps or leaving the military in general. I calculated what I needed to make, what I was making in retirement, and my current living conditions, and am I going to be able to live the same lifestyle I did while I was serving in uniform? That was important to me. I found mentors that had been successful, and I grasped onto them. And they were eager. And there's a lot of people out there that are eager to take somebody under their wing and make them better set up for success. I shared that I had a group of 4 of us that were transitioning at the same time, that we bounced ideas off of each other. And they were people that I respected a lot. And I valued all their opinions. Everybody's doing well today. And, you're going to have somebody that's going through that, as well as finding somebody who had previously done it. So the 4 of us were going through that, but we also had a 5th person that had retired a year prior. Hey, did you get a hiccup with this? Where were your hangups on that? Those were definitely things that is something that paid off. I shared my mistakes and my successes with others. I tried to give back to veterans that are leaving. And if anyone's listening to this and they need somebody to reach out to, I'm available anytime. Still don't turn off my phone. Some of the things that I would say I did wrong was, not really knowing what was on my resume and just trying to flood the gates with it, and not thinking about the words that were on it and the meaning of it and how companies use those resumes to find their potential employees. And then, truly, if I could go back, I would probably start earlier and find a career that I was interested in, maybe at my 20-year mark, and build a career and build an education path, a career, surround myself with the right people to where I could be successful in that. I honestly didn't think that when I left the Marine Corps that I would be back working for the Marine Corps. I'm grateful I am, because I missed it. It was truly an identity crisis, walking away, having to reevaluate yourself and build a new person. But I would say, almost 2 years after hanging up uniform, that I'm happy. I'm thankful for the opportunities I got, both in the Marine Corps and out of the Marine Corps. And like I said, it's a scary situation, but just remember who you are remember the obstacles you came over, that you overcame, and know that this is just one more obstacle that you will succeed in.
I appreciate you sharing your story, and I wish you all the best going forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate you watching. But before you go, if you like the video, please hit that subscribe button. Also, any comments are appreciated. Thank you.